Well, we got it. Oh, that, yeah, that's probably, yeah, there you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Fall Pub Talk, sponsored by Side A Brewing and the Entrepreneurs Club. Ago or so, talking to the Chamber of Commerce. Are we okay? This is my Jimi Hendrix moment. So we're talking to the Chamber of Commerce, trying to get a feel for what kinds of guests would really be appreciated here in LeGrand. And one of the suggestions was Voodoo Doughnuts. Well, it turns out that I have Trace and I know each other. We met about 6 years ago. I was working on another project, doing a photo shoot in Portland. We had top big wave surfer in the world come out. We did a photo shoots in a studio in the morning. We did outside in the afternoon. But she really wanted to get a sense for Portland, try something or experience something that was uniquely Portland. And so of course we had to hit the food carts. And then the other thing was she really wanted to see Voodoo Doughnuts. I had a friend named Todd Amaker, who's passed away now, just a couple of years ago. But Todd and I coached football for a lot of years. Our kids played football together, and his son worked for me. But Todd, I knew, was a real estate agent, and he had done some real estate for Voodoo Doughnuts, for Muchas Gracias, a Mexican restaurant chain, and for Island Times. So it was kind of his niche. But I called Todd, and he says, well, I'll talk to Trey. We'll see if we can get you in, because we're on a tight schedule. So we went out there, met Trace, went to the front of the lawn, took the pictures in front of the big donut.
Yeah.
And it was a blast. She was totally pumped, and so that was kind of how we met each other. So when I reached out to Trace and said, would you be open to coming out here to LeGrand, telling your story, sharing with people your entrepreneurial journey? He said, absolutely, I'd love to be able to do that. So that's how we got to this point. The Pub Talk series itself is really funded by the Entrepreneurship Club. One of the things we're doing to try and to fund some of these things is to sell these t-shirts. So, I mean, if anybody's into a t-shirt, we've got a box of them back there. We'd be happy to set you up. Real soft sell here. We're just glad to see you here. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the talk. Trace?
Yep, hello. Thank you. You just take that mic there. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me in LeGrand. I've had a great time. I was here last night and cruised around your fine town at night, and then had a beautiful day today. And so LeGrand's wonderful. And as we said here, we've kind of known each other over the years a little bit here and there, and running into one another. And I like to tell the story of Voodoo Doughnut. I'm up for questions here. I'm kind of an old school guy. I don't own a computer. I have a flip phone. So I actually brought some scrapbooks as well, where you can, if you want to afterwards, peruse the scrapbook and see me. And I've been in bands. I've run for mayor. I've run for city council of Portland. I've owned a lot of clubs, I've owned one club. I've played in a lot of clubs. I've booked music, and I've been sort of in Portland for a long time. I'm a Portland native. I was born in 1966. I'm a third. That's why the name is Trace. Richard Elliott Shannon III. Nobody knows that except doctors and lawyers and now you folks. But my grandfather went as Rick, and my father goes as Rick. My grandfather went as Dick, and I got Trace because I'm a third. But I've been Trace my whole life. So I started pretty much in Portland, Oregon, as like my journey. I had a job. I haven't had a boss since actually recently, but I had a boss. I worked at Kinko's in like the 80s, and I worked there, and it was really and that's kind of part of my message here. Is like at Kinko's, I was the fellow that helped people with their copies. I didn't even really make copies. I was a front person, but I met bands. I met a lot of bands at Kinko's because people used copies to make their posters. And so I met a lot of bands and met a lot of people doing that. So that was whatever years those were, 86 to something. And in 1990, I opened up a all-age rock and roll club, for lack of a better term, on 2nd and Burnside in Portland, Oregon. If any of you know, 2nd and Burnside is kind of a gritty, kind of bad area of town for Portland. But it's great and it's interesting, it's very historical. But I had this all-ages club called the X-Ray Cafe with a business partner named Benjamin Arthur Ellis. And what was great is, again, some of the thing I'll talk about is like your connections that you make in your community. All of the, now I had this all-ages place, and it was great because it was all ages. We didn't sell alcohol, which meant we could book whatever we wanted. And we did. We booked, it wasn't just a punk rock club. We had sewing circles every week. We had poetry. We had drum solos. We had meditation. We had Spanish classes. I mean, we did all, and the Spanish classes were great because we were trying to teach Spanish, but all of the Spanish drug dealers would come in and learn how to speak English, which was kind of an interesting thing. And we did a needle exchange with Outside In. We were the first people in the entire country to do a needle exchange, and which I thought was important for the area that we were in. And here we are, this all-age place on 2nd and Burnside, where kids were coming every night, and yet we had all these crazy things happening. And somehow we were able to kind of make that circus happen. And to fill your rock and roll club, you need bands, Kinko's. So since I had made all of these relationships at Kinko's, I was able to like make phone calls, and back then that's all you really did was make phone calls, and book bands and got to know the bands better. So I did that from about 90 to 94 with Ben, and we were kind of it wasn't a Voodoo Doughnut because since we didn't sell alcohol, which is what most people make their money on in the rock and roll booking area, we just never made any money. But yet we made enough money to pay our bills more or less, and we were always very fair with paying the bands. Even though we'd only sometimes have $8 at the door, we would pay them $5, and I would take $3. I mean, stuff, really that kind of crazy math. And but all of that sort of inherently rock and roll booking, music booking is just kind of inherently crooked. The whole music business is just kind of weird. And I always felt really strongly that I really did a good job, never ripped anybody off, was really straight, made a lot more connections. And my reputation was intact from 94. Then I kind of sang for my supper for a while. I'm in a band called the Karaoke from Hell Band, which is a live, it's karaoke, I bet everybody knows what that is, but this is with a band. So you come up and sing, you get the words, and there's a band behind you instead of the machine. And I host that, and I've been doing that for 24 years is when we started, 25 years. And I have a gig every Monday night right across the street from the Voodoo Doughnut, a place called Dante's, and I've been playing every Monday night for 19 years. And that's been enjoyable for so many reasons other than just having a gig, but it's just, again, it's keeping the connection. Karaoke is a wonderful community thing too, because karaoke, it's Japanese, and it's basically how, when I first learned about it, I read this article, I think in Spin magazine, and it was really interesting because there was a big crime surge in Japan, and there was never any crime in Japan, but there was this crime surge because people were getting mugged out at like 4 in the morning because these Japanese businessmen that were so stressed out from their work would come and sing American country songs and like sing their troubles out and their stresses out, and then they were getting mugged because they'd get drunk and they'd get mugged on their way home. And that stuck with me for a long time. And now after doing karaoke for as long as we have, and that karaoke's not going anywhere. I mean, it's in I'm sure LeGrand has a karaoke night or something somewhere. Like every little town has a karaoke night. But to do it live, it's just a different thing. And again, just meeting people, because every single song, a different person comes up to sing a song. I don't know who they are going to be and don't even know what song they're going to sing. But we do that. So I do that. It was always very important for my business partner, Cat Daddy. This is my partner for Voodoo. We always, he announced barroom wrestling. There was a thing called POW, a place called Satyricon in Portland, and he was the announcer for kind of a barroom wrestling match without a ring. It was just crazy and very theatrical and stuff. So he knows his way around a microphone and stuff as well. And I'm pretty comfortable getting up on stage and being a big ham. So there's a little background with that in Portland. So after the X-Ray closed down, I then booked a place called Burbati's Pan, probably from about 95, 6 to 2001. And once again, connections, a lot of people that played the X-Ray were now enjoying greater success. I mean, the X-Ray was right in the middle of grunge. It's like right when Nirvana's record, all that stuff. So all the Seattle bands, all those Olympia bands, all these bands wanted to play the X-Ray because we were an all ages place. And then I was able to kind of take those connections to the next level, which was Burbati's, which was about a 600 venue place. And it was right around the corner. The X-Ray was across, it's in the same building, it's the same thing, same landlord. I had the same landlord in 1990 that I have today. And again, connections with that. And I feel that that's just really important, especially with, I think, a lot of everybody doing this all the time and everybody feels connected, but really, who knows if you really are. I just think that you have to be really careful to just be nice to people, and hopefully, you know, you're going to see them again, and they might be able to help you, or you might be able to help them, and that's it's a message that I keep coming back to. And I've just always had a lot of really good connections, and I've just been very, very, very fortunate that I've had these great connections, but just kind of stayed put, kind of kept plugging away. I was just going through a box of stuff I need to get rid of, and I was looking at some old bank statements from not very long ago. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, if that. And, you know, I had $384 in the bank, you know, and I had taken out $40 or something, you know, so it was I lived paycheck to paycheck, and had cheap rent because Portland was cheap back then, and but always had a job, always kind of kept hustling. The band would make a little money, I DJ, make a little money. Booking, I would make that was like my job, I had a salary for that. But once again, was very fair to all of the bands, and a lot bigger bands came through, you know, with managers and stuff. The X-Ray was very rinky-dink. Burbati's was much more promoters and bands, and once again, realizing how inherently crooked the music business is. And it was just really, to me, I had to really know that, you know, you can only lose your reputation one time. You know, that's it. Once you lose your reputation, you can't get it back for the most part. There's definitely tales of redemption out there, but, you know, I'd much rather, you know, lose money or lose something than lose face. And so that's important. So I was able to do that through pretty much all of the 90s. I booked bands from probably 90 to 2000, 2001. And hopefully kind of kept my reputation, made a lot more friends, et cetera. Then enter Cat Daddy. This is a friend of mine. We were friends before Voodoo Doughnut. My mother introduced us. They were bartenders together at the Imperial Hotel, which is in downtown Portland, and my mom was always saying, you should get together with my boy and hang out with Trace, and she was telling me the same thing. And we sniffed around each other for a while. I dog sat his dog and stayed in his apartment for a couple of weeks once, and I love dogs. I took great care of his dog and made his bed when he got home, and so he was fine. So I passed whatever test that was, and we became friends. And then what young men do quite often is sit around and drink beer and sit up late at night and talk about trying to do something. And we always wanted to do something. We didn't know what that was. We just wanted to do something. And this is probably 2000 or something. And one of the things that we talked about was a bar. Maybe we'd open up a bar. He was a bar manager, worked at a bar. I booked bands. We could probably make a crazy bar. But we were also kind of tired of the hours of the bar, and also bars are expensive. There's insurance, there's OLCC, da-da-da-da. And we were like, well, maybe we could do something else. One of the things we talked about was a travel service where we would or a tour service where we'd take grandma to the Rose Garden and all of the kind of normal sites, but what about more of a grungier one? Or one of my ideas was just one that would be very personal to me, where I would take people to ex-girlfriends' homes, or take them to this is this phone booth where I made this call one time, do something that would be really not interesting to anybody but me, but probably people would take it. So we just kind of had that idea, and we were really going for that. We were pricing different cars out, because we thought if we're going to do a grungy 90s one and show the nitty gritty side of Portland, let's have kind of a crazy car and then have a really nicer car for the grunge. So we were really kind of going that direction and kind of getting excited about it. I think we had some business plans written up, and we were dinking around. And then 9/11 happened. And it was a tour group, it's just going to be weird. Everything got weird then. So we sort of regrouped, had some more beers and cocktails and discussed, well, what else are we going to do? And at some point, I mean, a long time ago, in the 80s, just like a party thing. I mean, I can't believe that from just saying, haha, wouldn't it be funny? I always thought about having a donut shop, and I wanted to call it Every Picture Tells a Story Donut, which is a Rod Stewart song. And I just thought that would be really funny, and you'd have pictures of Rod Stewart everywhere, and that was like my whole haha idea, like a picture of Rod Stewart, a donut shop. And that didn't really, you know, we weren't really thinking about that, but it's funny that then we opened up a donut shop. And Cat Daddy grew up in the South. He's from Memphis and had a lot of donuts growing up. I wasn't even allowed to eat donuts growing up in Colorado. I'd sneak one here and there, so I really had no experience in donuts. Cat Daddy has experience in restaurant management. He actually has the degree in business something, so he's kind of the, you know, the brains of the operation. We always kind of say he's the dough and I'm the nut, was kind of the funny thing to say. And so one of the things that we discussed on our you know, what are we going to name it and all that thing. I bet we certainly didn't fight about it, but we were like passionate about spelling donut correctly. That was just this huge thing, because it's got to be spelled D-O-U-G-H. I don't know why it's ever been spelled doughnut. I have a theory. I think maybe there was a neon shortage in World War II or something, but I don't know that for sure. But it just drives me crazy because we make them with dough, not with do. And so donut, donut, donut. So we knew that. Voodoo kind of came along because we always say there's a lot of O's, and they look like donuts. Cat Daddy had an idea, wanted to do a voodoo barbecue in Memphis when he was still living in Memphis, and so that kind of carried over from that. But when we put that together, we were like, Voodoo Donut, we're going to open up a donut shop. We did research. We started looking for locations. I knew that Burbati's had a restaurant they weren't using anymore. When you used to walk through, there was a cafe, and they had a hood. You need a hood to make donuts. And so I knew that there was this vacant hood. I was thinking about quitting there. I knew the same landlord, again, connection, so I was able to talk to Mr. Beardsley and said, hey, you're not using this, that the people that are renting this aren't even using this. Is there a way that we can carve out some space, and we're going to open up a donut shop? Everybody thought we were crazy to open up a donut shop. What do we know about donuts? So that was kind of that. Then we looked. As far as we can tell, there's never been a donut shop in downtown Portland. There's been donut shops in Portland. There are donut shops in Portland, but in downtown, never, as far as we could ever tell. And so we're like, great, we're downtown here. We know the space. Cat Daddy at that time was bar managing Atwater's, which is on the top of the pink building. So he's kind of familiar with the area. There's a lot of bars down there. There's just a lot of stuff. So we were kind of taking the whole donut idea and kind of flipping it and kind of making it a nighttime thing as opposed to a morning thing. Traditionally, donuts are, you make them at 3 in the morning, time to make the donuts. You get up, you open the doors at 6, you sell out until you sell out and close the doors at 3 or 4 or something. We opened at 10 p.m. to get the nighttime crowd, and then stayed open until 10 a.m., and that kind of made sense to us. But I kind of went a little ahead there. So still, donuts, what are we going to do? So we kind of had a name, we sort of had a space, and then we still didn't know how to make donuts at all. So I've been in some bands. I'm in a Rolling Stones cover band called the Misuse, and I was Mick Jagger in that. And I also know the belly dancer of the universe named Aziza, and she was belly dancing at this Armenian disco called the Air Rat, and it was a bakery during the day, huge productions, walk-in ovens, huge proofers. They did all of the baking and bread for like the Armenian community in Portland, Russian community and stuff, and they had this huge business. And then during the nighttime, they had this crazy like Russian Armenian disco thing. And our friend Aziza was belly dancing, and she had already told the Air Rat owners that we were these bigwigs from Seattle and we owned a donut shop, which was not true at all. We roll in, and they just thought they gave us free borscht, free vodka, fruits, vegetables, belly dancers. I mean, it was just like, my God. And so we start talking, and we're kind of completely sort of lying about being donut people. And I somehow mentioned the Rolling Stones, because somehow that came up, and Nellie is her name. She stopped the whole presses and was like, I love Rolling Stones. We moved to country because of Rolling Stones. And so she goes over to her calendar. We suddenly have 2 gigs at this weird Armenian disco. And so I became really good friends with Nellie and Avo. And then we all kind of came clean probably a couple of weeks later. It's like, look, we're kind of in the middle of this donut thing. we're working on it. I mean, what do you guys do? You guys don't make donuts, but you guys, have a supplier and stuff. So there was it's called Bake Mart. It's just a big Westco. It's a big mega corp, huge place where you get flours and baking stuff and all that. And that's what they use. So they introduced us to their the supplier guy, Timmy B. And he was the only person to really listen to us. We had a lot of people when we told him that we were going to open up a donut shop. My mother, his now wife, but girlfriend at the time, a lot of people laughed in our face and just said, "We love you. Good luck with that." And we just kept plugging away. And so kind of between the Rolling Stones and the Armenian thing, we met Timmy B. And then I'll see if I can scroll this thing here. So yeah, okay. So here, this is us. And so these are the first donuts there. So that is a glucose tower. We're on a glucose tower there. So when we talked to Timmy B, we just said, look, we don't know how to make donuts, but we want to use your product. What's the best way to do that? Which I think is a really good business advice. If you're getting something, have the experts show you how to make it as opposed to just ordering it and reading a book. Like, let's show. So they took us, we flew down to LA to their huge baking test kitchen where they just thought we were nuts because we were climbing the glucose tower and stuff. You can't do that anymore. That all changed. That's a very, very secure location now. It's pretty funny how they change it. We've been down there a few extra times now. But there we are, like, we had little shirts made up. That's me probably making a old fashioned, which is the first donut that you make. That's opening day. So Voodoo Doughnuts, as I say, was just around the corner from the X-Ray. We did carve up a little bit of a space at Per Body's Pan. That's my old office where I booked bands. And I had made them put a door in for me when I started having an office because I was claustrophobic. So that's actually our front door. So the original donut shop was 750 square feet. So the kitchen was probably 500 of that and 250 feet for the lobby. So everybody talks about the lines at Voodoo Doughnut. Mostly it's because the lobby was 250 square feet. You could fit about 10 people in there. So if there was more than 10 people, there was a line. We opened on May 30th, 2003. We were exhausted there. God, we were just such babies too, but we were tired guys. We'd really kind of begged, borrowed, and literally stole some stuff from dumpsters and things. When we opened, we had all used equipment because that's what we could afford. And we got open, and we knew how to make donuts because we learned how to do it at Bake Mart, and we made cake donuts and yeast donuts. And when I opened, I didn't know the difference between a cake donut and a yeast donut. Cake donuts are those yeast donuts you roll out and cut out. But learned how to do that. We sort of, Cat Daddy and I kind of divided the work pretty fairly and well. I would work the front, he'd work the back, and the next day we'd switch it. He was always a little better donut maker than I was. I hate working in the back of kitchens. I just never had done it. So it's like, oh my God, a 3-compartment sink, what is this? Like I was just completely green. But I was, because of Kinko's and being a rock and roll guy, I was able to talk to customers and be somewhat engaging. That was our first employee, Nicole, and then that's the street Elvis, who's very famous in Portland for being Elvis. So he's there for opening day. And that's us cutting our ribbon, being open. That first day we had $3,000 left in the bank. That was it. Probably started with we had 40. So we opened up Voodoo Doughnut with $37,000. And this was it. We didn't have any more money after this. I mean, that was pretty much make it or break it. First day, we sold out of donuts. We thought everything is great. This is the lobby and some notes from the first day there. But the lobby, very small. We just had a tiny little counter and big, crazy chandelier. We sold like $300 on the first day, which we were like, this is great, man. We're going to just be rocking. And $300 because our little stuff, if we only sold $150 a day, we could break even. So we were like already making money. Second day and we sold out. We were just making more donuts than we'd ever made in our lives. We're going crazy. And the next day we sold like $300 again on Saturday. And we're like, oh my God, that's great. And then we used to close on Sunday. So closed on Sunday. And Monday night we're at it again. I'm doing my gig across the street at Dante's. Cat Daddy's working. I go over there. We had sold $12 worth of donuts that day. He's getting a little nervous. I'm getting a little nervous. I was like, well, there's always there's always tomorrow. Next day, we sold $8 worth of donuts. We're getting a little nervous. Weren't quite sure what was going to happen there. But, people still believed in us, and we were going to keep going. That weekend, we got through the weekend, and we got through the weekend, and suddenly that little donut shop at Could, the 750 square feet, that place is incredible. It's like the Golden Calf. It's the one that people come from all around the world to go see. It's now 2,200 square feet. We took some more real estate from Burbodies just because literally we had no more room. We had people from Bake Mart. Everything comes in a 50-pound bag. So we had 50-pound bags stacked to the ceiling, and the health department, they were in front of the gas heater. I mean, just everything was so crazy. Old building, and we were just rolling. So 5 years later, we opened up this location here, which is the Sandy location, the Davis location, and that's on about 1.3 miles from downtown. And it's an old Arctic Circle, and it was a car dealership thing for a while. It was for lease, and we made a phone call. The guy showed up, and next thing you know, we have that space. And so we were able to take a lot of the pressure off of Voodoo One for our second location. And at this point, too, we were sort of starting to rely on wholesale. And wholesale donuts, what we did that no one else had ever done was we charged you full price for them plus gas. And we didn't sell it at a wholesale price. But we had to deliver them. You had to remember alarm code. You had keys. Everybody wants them at 6 in the morning. And we went from 5 wholesale accounts to 10 wholesale accounts to like 30 or 40 wholesale accounts. Soon we had 2 vans, 5 people driving the vans. And but I will say that we probably had wholesale for 2 to 3 years. It really got the word out. And we had like the Zupans account. I don't know if you know what Zupans is, but it's a pretty fancy-dancy grocery store. And I just remember a lot of my fancy-dancy friends who live in the hills of Portland. Whoa, I saw you guys at Zupans. You must be a very serious, place. And so that sort of, I think, got the word out in a nice way. But what was happening was we were making all these donuts for wholesale, and we'd have these racks of beautiful bacon maple bars and glazed donuts and things. And all these drunk people, we couldn't make enough donuts. And drunk people saying, I want a bacon maple bar. And I was like, I can't sell you that bacon maple bar because Zupans owns that bacon maple bar now. So we sort of learned a good lesson. It was the only time we actually had to let people go for the first time, but we dismantled the wholesale operation. And, I'm going to say probably about a year and a half after we opened the Davis location. And what was great is that we didn't notice it at all. We were making so many donuts for just people coming into the shop that we now knew how to make that many donuts. It was great to learn how to make that many donuts, but they're really hard to pack. Every time you touch a donut, they kind of die. They don't look as good. Wholesale is really a pain in the butt, but it really helped us get the word out. So I like wholesale for that reason. So now we have 2 locations in Portland, Oregon. We opened 5 years to the day that we opened number 1, and we had a parade of 2,000 people. We had a police escort. We had the mayor. We had all this stuff. The roller derbies, hearses, 18 wheels. It was great. We marched. We took some of the secret voodoo oil from the fryer and handcuffed a guy, a goon with some glasses, and we brought it over with a police escort and poured it into the other deal, voodoo stuff, and started doing that. And so then, we're like, wow, this is kind of rolling in Portland here. What happens? And, the pink boxes are kind of being everywhere. People are talking about it. We were very, very fortunate to get a lot of press, free press. We didn't ever pay for advertising. It was always word of mouth. And, but we were just fortunate that we had a good relationship with the newspapers when there were actually newspapers. And so they were writing about us, and then television shows started kind of knocking on the door, and it kind of magically coincided with this fascination of Portland, where the New York Times and television shows were all coming to Portland. I don't know if Travel Portland, the travel people that get people and conventions to town did something, but people were coming to Portland, and they all wanted to film at Voodoo Doughnut. And so Man versus Food, you said you saw me on that. They came. Anthony Bourdain came. A lot of people were coming. Guy, whatever his name, who spray paints the thing, never came. Everybody thinks that he came, and he never did. But we just had a lot of travel shows other than cooking shows. But then we were making weird donuts, and kind of going back to making weird donuts, we sort of kick-started a dying industry. Donuts were always 50 cents. They were always kind of thought, kind of a crappy donut, crappy cup of coffee. we were making big fluffy donuts and charging 85 cents for donuts, and all of the people in California were like, oh my God, you'll never be able to get 85 cents for a donut. You should charge 50, and we charged 85. And now we charge like $1 for that same donut. But so we charged a little more, and then we started putting weird toppings on stuff, which had never been done, including bacon, which is the bacon maple bar. We started in 2003, and there's nobody ever put a strip of bacon on a maple bar before us. Pancakes and bacon, sure, but that was kind of the deal. But it's funny that it's just so often imitated now, and everybody kind of talks about how they're doing it right. But we did it in 2003. Anthony Bourdain loved it. He talked about it, and that really bumped up. At this point, too, we were still 10 p.m. to 10 a.m., but we were getting better at making donuts, staying open later, opening earlier. So we'd open at 7 or stay open till noon. So we were kind of advancing our hours. Not 24 yet, but we were probably working we were open 12 to 15 hours a day or something, and still we were just tired too. It was just still Cat Daddy and I. We probably had 2 or 3 employees. And we would, you got there at 6 or whatever, 3 in the afternoon, and leave at, 10 in the morning, and just exhaustion. And then you'd have to go shopping. And a lot of those trips when we were so exhausted, that's when we started saying, hey, well, let's put cereal on donuts, or let's put cotton candy powder on a donut, and let's do this and let's do that. And that's where we put NyQuil on a donut, which we had a lot of notoriety for that. And we did a NyQuil donut, and we also did a Tums donut. We dipped it in Tums and then crushed, or Pepto-Bismol, and then crushed Tums, cherry Tums. And we thought for the bar scene, people suck up the alcohol. And the NyQuil donut was just weird. And then we were at some point making a caffeine donut as well, where there was this really great concentrated caffeine, and it really tasted good. And it's off the market now. It's too bad because it was a good donut. So we were selling like NyQuil donuts and caffeinated donuts, and it was like the speedball, you could get one of each. And so we were kind of, pushing it a little bit. And then the Oregonian wrote this great big article about the night of the NyQuil donut. And they showed us, working, but it was, front page of the entertainment section, and we're just getting all this just great press. And kind of during that time too, again, connections, the band that used to play at the X-Ray, the Tennesseans, every Tuesday, well, he went on to become the food and beverage manager for Pumpkin Ridge Golf Course. So when the Women's U.S. Open was held at Pumpkin Ridge, he wanted to know if we could get Voodoo Doughnuts to that, so we got a bunch of press for that. Plus, we had to do like 50 dozen donuts a day for, 4 days in a row, and it went into we had to do them on Monday too, because it went into sudden death, and man, that was great. And just kind of, we just were kind of, again, a lot of connections and just knowing the right people and people knowing the right people. And so, so all this is kind of rolling along, and we're like, well, maybe we should see if we should expand even more. So we said maybe Eugene, which is this one here. And in Eugene, we're Todd Amaker, who, again, connections. I met him because he came to the donut shop at Davis, and my dog met his dog, and we started talking, and Todd was a talker, and I'm a talker. And the next thing you know, I find out he's a real estate broker, and he lives in Eugene, and so he's now looking for a place for us in Eugene. So he finds us this place in Eugene, and that, we didn't have to put a lot of money into that one. It was great. There was already a hood. It was a restaurant going out of business. We kind of just took their space, built a couple of walls. I mean, it still cost some money, and we had to do some stuff. But so then we were in Eugene. Eugene, it's a great town. I love Eugene, but it's small, and we were used to these Portland numbers, and Eugene's just a small town. It's bigger than LeGrand, but it was, so everybody says, why don't you put a, shop here? It's just a matter of people, I'm sure we would do fine in LeGrand or the Tri-Cities area or something, but we were kind of looking for another home run. But what it taught us was that we could do it again. It's the little engine that could. If I was a family guy and wanted to run a donut shop, I could do that. It would just be, I could have my family live in Eugene, work, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and make a very nice living and a tidy sum of money. But we were kind of thinking bigger, because this was getting to be sort of a bigger deal. And Cat Daddy and I are smart guys, and we're now learning, now at this point we probably had over 100 employees. Now we have a place out of town. Also finishing the Anthony Bourdain story, in his segment that he did, he came back to the donut shop on Sunday, and we were closed, and he was so mad, and he's like, no, you're closed. And so at that point, we're like, we're going 24 hours, 7 days a week, because of Anthony Bourdain, basically. So So suddenly we're 24 hours, 7 days a week. All of these Davises. Eugene closes now Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday at like midnight, kind of bar 30, and then opens up again at 6, just because there's just no business. There's somebody in there making donuts. We just don't have the doors open. So once we realized we could do Eugene, and again, if there was any trouble, we could get in a car and it's 2 hours away, then we were like, well, heck, we should, and at this point we were going out of state a little bit. We went to Texas. We went to Austin, Texas, figuring that that's a big music town. It'd be great. Texas will love us. We couldn't get any love in Texas. I don't know why. We made phone calls. Nobody called us back. Nobody cared. But, still in the back of our mind. So we went to Denver, where I used to live in Denver for a while. That's not why we chose Denver, but I was kind of familiar with it. It's on Colfax Avenue, which if anybody knows that is an even sleazier, grittier avenue than Burnside is in Portland, but we're so used to that. And they're trying to clean it up. And so we thought, why not? Let's immerse ourselves in the Denver lore of Colfax. And so we opened Denver. I'm getting bad at dates about when that was, but it was 4 years after, Eugene or something like that, 3 years after that. Denver loved us. Mayor was there for the cutting. Bill Hanslick from the Denver Nuggets who used to play was there. We had mascots from all this stuff. Denver's a great town because there's a lot of sports teams, so there's a lot of reasons if the Broncos are doing well or the Rockies or the Avalanche or the Rapids or anything are doing well, you can always make donuts. You can hex Tom Brady and you can do that kind of stuff. And you have a good time. Colfax is great. Denver fell in love with us. And it was a total home run. I mean, it was just awesome. It was on Colfax. One thing I love about the Denver location on this gritty thing, on the far end that way, it's a little bit of green, you can see that's a dispensary. When we opened, marijuana became legal like the next week. So that was kind of funny. Then there's a tattoo parlor. Then there's a donut shop. Then there's a lesbian bar. Then there's a dentist. so it's like pretty great. And there's really no seating at the, not a lot of seating, if really any, in that shop. And the lesbian bar opens at like 9 a.m. and they were very kind. They have minors are allowed till 9, so they would let people sit over in the lesbian bar, which I always think is very interesting for the people coming to get a donut shop. And then they're at this great lesbian bar that was kind of a cafe during the day. But they have a sign proudly on their sandwich board that says, "You're welcome to eat your pink boxes over here." So, so I just think that's funny. And they're great. And once again, connections. Jody B., who's this very, very, very important gay advocate in Denver, she introduced us to a lot of really nice people. And we really felt like a lot of people in Denver feel that we started in Denver, which is really great. So then we had that. So then we're like, well, let's go try Austin again. So we end up going to Austin. We do get a little love in Austin this time. And that's this one down here. But it's 6,000 square feet. It might be the largest donut shop in the world. I mean, it's crazy. We had to buy out a restaurant. And it's really the only space we could really find on 6th Street. And if you're familiar with Austin at all, 6th Street is just this crazy music hub. And like all the bars are on there and it's just nuts. And at that point too, we're like, it's a little touristy, but what the heck? We're kind of touristy now. Let's just do it. And that almost killed us. It's so big. It was so hard to manage from afar. It's 6,000 square feet. I might have mentioned that 20 times. But yet it's a beautiful store, but it really was expensive. It went over budget, and it kind of scared us. So we were getting a little nervous because here we are kind of getting over our skis a little too much. And at that point, Universal called us. So these are two Universal, studios. That's LA and that's Orlando. And this is early on too, because LA now has this huge voodoo doll that's like 20 feet tall, and there's also like a 25-foot tall throne in front of that place. But Universal called us because it was a guy from Portland and he was a fan. And again, contacts. He used to go to the X-Ray. Remember the X-Ray? He's now the food and beverage manager of the LA Universal, or was at the time. He calls us up, thinks it's a great thing. They're trying to revamp their area. And we went down, totally negotiated this whole kind of Universal deal, which is really funny because it was a big boy meetings and lots of meetings and lots of talk about Universal and how it's going to work. And it's really important with your brand. One of the things you may have noticed is I did not bring donuts. I'm so sorry, but they would have been like a day and a half old by the time. I've been enjoying your town. And I just didn't want to bring you guys stale donuts, and it would kill me. You folks might not even know the difference, but me, I would, and I just can't sell you guys, give them out even, stale donuts. So I did not bring donuts. But we figured Universal, to keep the brand, they're sort of in the people-pleasing business, they're Universal. And we figured we could probably learn a thing or two from them with line control or all sorts of stuff. They're a big wig deal. So we kind of we were negotiating these deals, and also at the same time we're realizing that and that didn't certainly get us out of the hole, but Austin started doing its thing. It just really freaked us out because it was so big, and we just weren't. Rent is so expensive, and we weren't doing like double the amount of donuts just because it's double the amount of space. And so that, again, kind of freaked us out. So we sort of piped down the dream of like, we can open one of these a year. I mean, we can totally go to Nashville, or we could come to La Grande, or we could go to wherever. We could open one of these a year. And we hadn't opened one up for like 3 years. And so we're kind of freaking out. So at some point, I'm like, let's not sell out. But there's a company, they help put money and businesses together. And they had just made a deal with Dave's Killer Bread, if you're familiar with that. And it's our friend now, David Howitt. And we're reading about the Dave Killer's Bread thing. And we're like, if they could make this crazy deal with this bread thing, and Dave he's a felon, and he's made a bunch of money, and he still owns a bunch of the deal. And so I met with Dave. I don't know if you know his story, but he was in fact a felon and then got out of jail. And they do second chance hiring, and it's a great company and a great story. And they hooked up with the people that we hooked up with. And so we were kind of, without telling anybody, kind of fishing for some venture capitalists and kind of see what that game's like. And that is a game. It's a long process. A lot of meetings with people that you just know you don't want to be in business with. Lots of people that are promising everything but maybe pass because, we were okay. We had, we proved ourselves in 2 different markets, 3 different markets. We had 2, and the numbers were great. I mean, all the numbers and a lot of things, but we didn't really still have a home run for the real big people that had the real big money. So we kind of had to sort of play that game for whatever it was, 1.5 years, 2 years. And finally, we took on a couple of folks, and it's great. I think the smartest thing we did was get some people to actually know how to scale this thing. As I say, we got kind of over our skis a lot, and we kind of have this lightning in a bottle. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, everybody's heard of Voodoo Doughnut. I mean, I don't know how many people have been there in this room, but it's just nuts about how many folks just love it, and they're fanatical about just donuts. And that brings us to the world famous donuts. I'll just whip through these. There's the bacon maple bar that went crazy. If you have any questions about their names, I could tell. That's an old fashioned, which is the first donut we ever made. That's the gay bar, because it's got the little Fruit Loops on it. The Diabolus Rex, which is the evilest donut in all the land, because of the famous Satanist in Portland, Rex Church, that you guys got to make a chocolate donut and make it unholy and put chocolate chips in it, and I don't know, put a pentagram on it or something. So we did. And that's the McMinnville cream, which has a mustache. It's filled with cream. The Guava Colada, the Double Bubble, Grape Ape, Old Dirty Bastard, the Marshall Mathers, because it's a plain cake donut with white frosting and M&Ms. The Maple Blazer Blunt, Old Dirty Bastards. That's just some of the donuts that we make. One of the things when Cat Daddy and I were making donuts, all of our voodoo dolls and things looked like Mr. Bill dolls with just white frosting. We now have these amazing little elves that work for us that do things like custom donuts. And what we do is we honor dead people mostly. We don't really do big birthdays, but we do, like the Roots were in town. Like the Roots aren't dead. George Clinton was in town, so that's why they're Weird Al Yankovic. That is a life-size Weird Al Yankovic with Weird Al Yankovic that we made for him just because we had a super fan working for us, and then they assembled it in the dressing room, and he started his whole show with like a camera and then went out on the show. But Weird Al's a huge voodoo fan and stays in line with his family, super cool. But these are donuts. I mean, they're just incredible. And something which we didn't really know when we started out, Cat Daddy was kind of pointing it out to me the other day, but we kind of were doing Instagrammable things before it was really Instagrammable. We didn't know that, but we had like that big donut stuff, and people are taking pictures in front of the signs and donuts even way back when. But these are just some of these are just nuts. I still want to do wrapping paper or shower curtains. I don't know, something weird with these. That's Morgan Spurlock, who ate, a Big Mac every day for a month or whatever. And that's the 20th anniversary of The Simpsons. They contacted us to make donuts, with donuts, they're a lot like flowers in that you could go anywhere with that pink box and people just light up. They just are like, oh my God, Voodoo's here, and they're donuts, and donuts just make people happy. And so it's really, it's great with the community. Donut shops kind of traditionally have been kind of a community center too, like a bar or brew pub or something that we're doing here. And you hang around, you drink coffee, and you have meetings at donut shops. And so with the community, with all these donuts, we've thought we should, of course, give back to charities. And so these are just some of the charities we do. And it's something we don't really we don't pound our chest about it and stuff, but we're proud that we've done that. And these days, we're probably right, we write checks for $3 to $10 grand for people. And it really feels good. I mean, it's a good thing. And these are some of these places really need $3 grand or 10 grand. Everybody needs $3 grand or 10 grand. The Earl Blumenauer fruitcake fritter, Earl Blumenauer, our congressman, likes giving fruitcakes out to all of the people in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and he partnered with us. Needless to say, the fruitcake fritter was not a huge success because just nobody likes fruitcake. We did, it was a good donut though. We've had tons of press. I mean, I was kind of talking about it. One of the things I always like to say, we never really paid for press, and one of the things I use a lot is, when you need press, you can't afford it, and when you can afford it, you don't need it. And so we just try to do crazy stuff, and these are some of the little ads that we did take out. This is our janitor that used to clean in the nude on Sundays when we were closed. I know, it's pretty crazy. We were in Ripley's, believe it or not. One of the things I'm very proud of, we were in Sunset Magazine the same month we were in Playboy Magazine. That was such a weird one too. And this, I don't even know what the Voodoo wedding, well, we do weddings, so there's somebody wrote about how Voodoo weddings work. There's Cat Daddy and I hamming it up for something. They did out at Soviet Island, they did a corn maze of the logo, which is pretty crazy. One of the things we're also pretty proud of is our pink van, and my dear friend still, but she was my girlfriend at the time, she's just always hustling about something, and she's always worked with at-risk youth. And so she wanted to buy a van and sell donuts and then give job skills to at-risk youth. So we were like, great. And she kind of ran the program, and then we have some of those youth still work for us today. Some of them have, in fact, are managers, like assistant managers and stuff. And it's, again, makes us feel good about that kind of stuff. That's a cop. Weirdly enough, cops don't eat donuts that much in Portland. I think they just think it's too cliche and funny. Firemen, all the time. Ballerinas, all the time. EMT people. The police here did, when marijuana became legal, showed using it, the police did this, showed what an ounce looks like next to a voodoo doll and what 8 ounces looks like next to a voodoo doll and what a pound looks like next to a voodoo doll, because I guess there was questions about what's legal and what's not illegal. One of the things we did that we're pretty proud of is we had the largest box of donuts in the world, and it was 666 pounds of donuts. If you do look in the Guinness Book of World Records, we're not in there, sadly, because they just didn't think that the boxes, because what we did, instead of just we did dump a bunch of donuts, as you can see over there, but what we did so it wasn't just a big gross mess, we weighed like what a box weighed, and we put 8 glazed donuts in each box. We gave or take a little bit what we would do, lots of math, oh my God. And then we just took these boxes with the donuts and stacked those up, then put all these other donuts for the visual aid of it. I mean, I guess if we had just dumped all the donuts in with a bulldozer, we would have won. But that was really a big, Wyden and Kennedy helped us design the box, and the Hawthorne Bridge, it was the 100th anniversary of the Hawthorne Bridge, so they had sod on the Hawthorne Bridge, and they closed the Hawthorne Bridge, and we had this, all of this, 666 pounds of Voodoo donut. Sam Adams at the time, the mayor was there. We did everything by the book. Guinness, you need to fly a guy out from Guinness and pay them money, and then you that would have been in there, I guess. But I always like to say with that too, since the Hawthorne Bridge was closed, we got rid of 666 pounds of donuts in probably 20 minutes. I think that was the world record. It was incredible. We're like, yeah, donuts are free now, and everybody just went. They ate all of those gross ones, all piled, and people just took all the boxes home. It was gone. We had that box around for a while. I don't know where it is anymore. That's the window of Mario's in Portland for the Portland Film Festival, where we made donuts look like all the flags. That's us at Google, which was weird. Google really liked us a lot, and we did some stuff with them, partnered with them. We sponsor the roller derby team in Portland. We did that really early on. This is the Breakneck Betties, but the superstar team, forgetting what they're called, the superstar with players from 4 different teams, are the world champions of roller derby. So that's kind of cool. We sponsor the Alpine Olympic skiing team, which nobody follows alpine skiing, but I don't even know what they do. It's like cross-country skiing, and they do different things. They jump, and they go fast, and they go slow, and this kind of thing. But no, they're always looking for money. But they're a hoot. That's the Rose Festival Princesses. One of my favorite things that I do every year is probably for almost every year we've been open, but I meet all the Rose Festival Princesses. And we sit around and eat donuts, and I talk to them, and that was, I think, this year. Tom Potter, when he was the mayor, named the Portland Cream the official donut of Portland, Oregon, which is pretty crazy. And this is Darcel with the mayor and Cat Daddy and I, and Darcel's sadly passed companion Roxy and Lady Potter there on the left. But that's in Tom's deal. And the Portland Cream they can never take that away from us. We're like the Portland Crane or the Rock or anything else. We're an official donut of. Yeah, well, Darcel, yeah, completely. Again, celebrities. This is one of my favorite ones. Vanna White. She came into the shop. I've always had a crush on Vanna White. I turned into like this blubbering 5th grader. And she was so pro. I'll just go on and on about how great. I mean, so was Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain was great, but Vanna's like showed up in a limo. Her crew is like, her camera crew for Wheel of Fortune was like 17 people, but they knew how to stay out of the way. Everybody was nice, everybody was polite. I mean, we're open for business when all this stuff's gone. When the cameras are rolling, we're still, excuse me, people are frying, it's dangerous. But Vanna was such a pro, and I don't even think they told her what she was doing. She was just like, what are we doing? And it was like, they're like, well, this is Voodoo Doughnut. And she's like, okay, what am I gonna do? And she ended up, she ate almost as many donuts as anybody ever has. And it was awesome. And they made her, and she's game, but her producers were like, why don't you take a bite of every single donut? So a big rack of donuts, they look really great from the end. So she took a bite out of almost every donut, which is 30 bites. And then she ate an apple fritter, and she ate a bacon maple bar. And I kept handing her napkins out of television side. She was very thankful. And then we got to go watch the taping of it. And I ran home and told my girlfriend that I think Vanna White has a crush on me. And just to kind of ha-ha, and she was like, oh yeah, ha-ha. And then when they came out, Wheel of Fortune, she did this, it's on, and she's like, I'm wearing a special dress for you. And she kind of gave me this like, kind of heart shooting guns at me. And I'm like, dude, my girlfriend's like, oh my God, she's totally has a crush on me. So again, a boy can have a dream, right? So there's Kiss with donuts of likenesses of them, which is really funny. There's Daft Punk in the donut shop. Whether there's actually Daft Punk, I'm not sure. There's Weird Al again. There's Mario Lopez, because of course the Universal deal. There's Amanda Siegfried, I think's her name, and nobody told us she was going to bring a box of donuts on Jay Leno and enjoy a maple bacon bar. And her whole bit was talking about Voodoo Doughnut. So she's kind of our new best friend too. Those two did the Cheryl Oregon Trail, what's that book called, and the movie, but it's Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern. And they shout out. So it's just, it's crazy how this little donut shop has got like all of this, attention. And so weddings, we figured if we're going to be a Voodoo, we need to have something. So let's do weddings. And both Cat Daddy and I were Universal Life ministers. This is early on because it's still Burbati's Pan sign. So this is when it was 750 square feet in the exits there. But what a beautiful Portland snowy day. We married cats, which that lady was so crazy. I mean, she had tuna fish cans like tied to the back of her car, and it was really good. And we actually didn't perform that one. We had a person working for us named Catherine, but she went as cat, and she really did like meow. She was kind of like Julie Bird, sort of how Julie Bird turned into a bird kind of. She kind of just meowed a little bit, so she just wanted to do to the performance, and she did. And these are legal weddings. We do legal weddings for $300, and we do like renewals for 30. What that really entails is, as long as in Oregon and in the other, we do them in all the shops. But in Oregon, if you bring in your paperwork and everything, you're a universal life minister, you can do the wedding. So we don't close down. We stop the line. You get your 5-minute ceremony. You get some donuts that look like you. You get donuts and coffee for 20. And you can kind of use the lobby for a while. And we kind of shove you out after a while because it's not really we don't really have like an extra space. It's the lobby of the donut shop. But we've married a lot of different people. We've married all cats, and we've had same-sex marriages, and we've had, very traditional marriages. A lot of grandmothers wondering what the heck their grandchildren are up to. But we've done, I'd love to see the deal. I'm sure there's a way to find out, but I bet we've done over 1,000 weddings since we've been open, something like that, which is just crazy. And this is kind of just towards the end of the deal, but this is like kind of a thank you. We were, I don't know, this is probably our 15th year or something, but we've been open 16 and a half years now. This is kind of like as you probably know, like the Sgt. Pepper album cover kind of, and so there's some of our mentors and people in there, and then just a lot of weird Oregon pioneers and stuff as well. But it's been a great journey, and one of the things I always like to kind of say is, I'm very humble still. I get up, or I try to be. I get up, in the morning, and I think any time anybody gets up in the morning, you can put both feet on the ground. You should be thankful. But it's crazy that like my best friend is still my best friend. Everybody says don't go into business with your friend, and nothing but bad can happen. And Cat Daddy and I are probably closer than ever, and we've gone through this journey together, keeping our connections close to us, and listening to mentors, and listening to people who have done it, and being able to defer, and being able to work together and figure things out. It's been an interesting trip for sure, and it's all because of donuts, which is so funny because people get so worked up about stuff, and we're just making donuts. It's all they are. They're donuts, and we sell coffee and milk and pop, and you can buy a T-shirt. We're not reinventing really much of the wheel. But now, as I say, we've taken some partners on, and so for me personally, that was about 2.5 years ago when that happened. Personally, for Cat Daddy and I, it's great because we got a little money off the table, because any money that we were making, we were just plowing back into the business. Taxes come every year. It's just, it's like you make all this money and it all goes away, and it's just crazy. We're still working pretty hard, but we have a lot of people that have been with us for 13 years, 14 years. They're managers now. They've started families. They've bought homes. Now we probably have 300 employees with all the shops and headquarters. We pay people a very fair, decent wage. We have benefits. It's a good place to work still. Things are changing because it's hard work, super hard work to do what we're doing. And we're we got a CEO in here. That's what happens when we let the people who know what they're doing. And again, going back to I've never had a boss since the 80s in Kinko's. The CEO is technically my boss. So suddenly I have a boss, which is just so odd. But he's a fellow named Chris Schultz, and he's our guy. And he worked at Starbucks, and he worked at Mod Pizza, and he scaled Mod Pizza from 1 to 364 or something. So he has a lot of experience with restaurants. It's all the guy does. He lives and breathes restaurants, and he knows how to do it. It's kind of jarring a little bit because we've kind of always did it our way. Part of the reason that I think that we were successful is that we were kind of disrupting the norm. But when you kind of get to a point when you're going to make 20 or 30 of these in all these different states, getting things kind of more in a streamlined fashion does make some sense. And again, I think that's kind of the smartest thing that we actually did, even though it's kind of difficult sometimes. It's kind of the way things are going to get done, because if not, we were going to, we almost lost it all in Austin, and that would have been tragic. So it's interesting now. It's kind of a new phase for Cat Daddy and I. We're sort of now the founders, which is great. And I think that really, instead of being weird about it, I should embrace it more and just realize that now I get to do things like this as opposed to making donuts, because making donuts was hard. It was really hard. That time to make the donut thing is so true. And but I'm super proud of the folks that I've met, the connections I made through work. A lot of my people that work for me are my friends. and I'm hoping that there's a lot of opportunity as we continue to grow. We've opened one shop since the investors. We opened another shop in Denver. So we have 2 in Denver now. Beautiful store. It's doing great. And then we're hammering nails in Houston, Texas right now. And there's just plans for more cities and stuff. So we don't want to be the biggest donut shop. We don't want to sell the most donut shops. We just want to still have our interesting little niche, little freaky donut shop, you know. And as far as me, I don't have children, but, you know, for folks out there who have children, I think when your children become 16 and a half, you kind of lose grasp of them anyway. So, you know, I kind of think, you know, she has her license, she's going to the beach, probably has some bad boyfriend. And, you know, that's kind of how I think of the donut shop now. And it's, you know, Cat Daddy and I are still involved. I go into headquarters. It's nice. I don't have to work as hard as I used to work. Again, it's kind of difficult for me because I used to really just have my hands in everything. You know, Cat, you know, when you're the owner, you know, you got to fix the toilet. You have to make sure people are getting paid. You got to, you know, do all that stuff. And getting these professionals in, as again, I think was the best thing we've done ever. And also just, I'm excited about what the future holds. And with Chris, for the last couple of years, we've just been kind of laying track. And we, you know, we actually have a new supply chain now because Bake Mart, as much as they loved us, didn't really play ball with us. Cat Daddy and I would have waltzed in, shook their hands, et cetera. But Chris, with his experience, is like, you guys should have a contract and, you know, lock in your flour prices and, you know, all these things, where we were kind of naively just, you know, shaking people's hands. So we got a better deal with a different supply chain. The donuts are still delicious. No one knows the difference. Still working out kinks. We take credit cards now. We were cash only for a millionaires. We take credit cards. We have POSs now. We've, you know, streamlined. We used to have 100 types of donuts, probably have 55 now. And those are things that, like, oh my God, we can't get rid of the Neapolitan. But the Neapolitan doesn't sell. It sells, but it's, you know, it was one of the first donuts I made up and or whatever, and these kind of things. But when you're gonna have 50 or 60, you gotta have everybody making the same donuts and kind of have that same experience. I could argue you could totally do it a different way, and I think it could be successful too, but tried and true, and the people that we have, I'm gonna listen and kind of continue to go for this ride and see what happens in the next 2 to 5 years. So, and in the meantime, I'm still singing. I'm in my band still. I'm still trying to, you know, keep those connections. I'm trying to be somewhat of a mentor to some younger people. I give a lot of speeches like this. I'm still pretty green at it, so I'm still kind of working on my shtick. But I think too, the other thing I did do, because I am kind of old school, I didn't know for sure this was going to work because I just don't trust all this stuff. So I brought scrapbooks. So if anybody wants to go and look through my scrapbooks, just be careful with them. But there's photos of me and probably sitting on Santa's lap and playing in the Miss Shoes and the Kurtz Project and the X-Ray Cafe and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to. There's no reason you need to, but I just thought I'd bring those along too. And I've again, been very fortunate. I was born in Portland. I've just worked in the same neighborhood from 1990 to 2000 and whatever it is now, 19. So it's funny because when I first moved back to Portland, I flew into the airport, got on a bus. I'd never been on a bus before from the airport, and went over the Burnside Bridge. And at that point, there was Bologna Joe's, which was kind of a social service place for homeless people and people down on their luck. And just that whole area has always been Skid Row. And I just remember making this mental note when I was 17 years old, like, don't go to this part of town. This part of town's really scary. And then lo and behold, I've been down there now for 30 years or whatever. So, and I'll answer any questions. I think that's pretty much the end of those slides. But if anybody has any questions or any clarifications, I'm here.
I have a quick question.
Sure, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. See which what? That's such a great question. So forever I said, heck with Seattle, because Seattle has treated Portland like a terrible little brother forever. I used to kind of I didn't like Seattle very much. I had an attitude about it. And so I was on camera saying, screw Seattle. Our CEO is from Seattle, and he worked at Starbucks and Mod Pizza, so we're looking in the Seattle market now, and that's one of the things that I'm not going to go to the mat for that anymore. Seattle's fine, and I've been going up there. I've had a little more time to enjoy Seattle, but that was always a question, and I like that we went to Denver. Denver ended up kind of being a wild card kind of choice, and it ended up being such a they just embraced it so well, and it was kind of a pleasant surprise. I still have a feeling that Seattle will be all snobby and weird about it, but who knows? Go Seattle. I'm into doing Seattle now, but I was weird at first. So yes. Well, that's what we were talking about. LeGrand, Tri-Cities, not right now. It's just there's not enough oomph. You know, it would be a great thing. We would do well. I think if Cat Daddy and I were kind of rocking, maybe. I think if we get what kind of the new regime would like, probably a couple of big fish, and we're looking in some cities, but you can probably figure out what those cities are, the bigger cities. I think if we get a few of those and kind of still getting the word out there, we will probably maybe fill in places like that. You know, why not Boise? Why not the Tri-Cities? Why not, you know, some of those towns? I still keep thinking like B markets. I like those ideas of like Pittsburghs and Buffaloes and things, but people are kind of thinking bigger. You know, they're kind of thinking LAs and New Yorks and Vegases and things like that, which, hey, I mean, that's going to be great. That's where the people are, and that's, you know, where the deal is. Yes?
Thank you, especially for the musical journey. For those of us who've been to all those places,
Oh,
really good
of course.
My question is, if you were a roller derby skater, what would your nickname be?
Oh, you know, well, I've always wanted a nickname, and nicknames just kind of have to kind of just happen. And so when I was a small kid, I always wanted people to call me Trace the Ace. That never stuck. But I don't know why people just didn't start calling me Sprinkles. I was kind of hoping that was going to stick. And I have a friend named Kelly Gately who he's like, "Hey, Springs, how's it going?" There's like one guy in the world that calls me Sprinkles. But so maybe Sprinkles. You know, I think that might be my roller derby name.
Trace, this will be my final question. Just on your evolution, or your Cat Daddy's evolution from startup to 15 years and letting it go, how much you had to grow as a human being, or as a leader? Anything?
What was the question?
Your evolution as a human being from when you started to when you let it go, and your growth as a leader. I don't care if it's HR, I don't care if it's personnel, I don't care if it's about people and problems, solutions and systems. How did you grow, or how much did you grow?
As a person or as a business, or both?
Both.
Well, that's how much I grow. Well, as a person, a lot. I feel like the thing I'm proud of is like the X-Ray Cafe thing was incredible education for me. I went to one day in college. Sorry, deans and everybody from college, but I went to one day in college. I have zero, campus life stories, but I had the X-Ray for 4 years, and I learned everything in those 4 years. I learned how to deal with people and how to deal with crazy people, drunk people, young kids, keeping them safe, dealing with it was really Wild West on 2nd and Burnside from 90 to 94, and learning how to deal with it in a different way, like with drug dealers, Chiva Coca. We'll go out there with a clown wig on and hand people a Dr. Pepper, you know, and they're just like, what? You know, just confusing people and just having kind of fun with it and just learning how to do that. And I've taken that from the X-Ray, and I think I've expanded that a lot with Voodoo. Voodoo is in that same crazy neighborhood. There's a lot of mentally ill people. It's very sad in Portland, Oregon. And just having to deal with a 24-hour business, I think I grew as a person about just how to deal with people. I'm really good at people. You can put me in a room full of just about anybody, and I do okay. Learning as far as business goes, I think I'm still learning. I think I'm still pretty great. I think everybody thinks I'm this great businessman, but a lot of stuff is just, I kind of shoot from the hip, and a lot of stuff luckily stuck. Learning that you do need HR and you do need a tax guy, but again, with connections, we had a tax guy because I knew somebody, and that's changed, but you know, it was still just kind of always connections and not just looking somebody up or looking in the phone book. I had some tried and true methods. I still think I'm in the middle of that growth as far as business and a person goes. I don't think I've continued to stop growing as a person. But I think, I mean, kind of that message of where I started, just even from Kinko's, it was always about connections and people and being nice, just being a nice person. Don't be a dick. And it just goes a long ways. And you know, I'm pretty much the same guy I was before, you know. Sometimes I'm a little more obnoxious. I don't know why. I don't know if it's age or just you know, I can check myself and get cocky, but I think a lot of people do that. But a lot of that's because I'm a lead singer, so it's kind of part of my charm and my problem. But you know, and I think learning, I'm right now with business, I'm somewhat fascinated in the process. but not as much as I probably would have been when it was like mine and all mine, you know. But right now, when somebody else is driving the bus, I'm fascinated, but I'm gonna let them drive the bus, you know, and enjoy the ride at that point, and hopefully learn some things from, you know, from that. But and I learned, I mean, the CEO is he's a smart guy, and he's had a lot of experience and a lot of with what we're doing here, restaurant stuff. I mean, he just lives and breathes it. So if I really, I mean, some of our people that are close to him who started with me, it's been tough. I mean, I'll be honest, it's a lot of people either can't hack it or are having difficulty in still hacking it. But, you know, some people are, I mean, you're getting a PhD in business from this guy. And it's, you know, it's cool to watch other people. And I think when other people go further on their journey, they're going to be well equipped to, you know, either A, get another job, or B, continue with us. And I hope they do, because we are going to have these opportunities where we're going to have regions, and, you know, suddenly there's regional managers and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm kind of curious to see how that chapter plays itself out for sure. So.
You talked about renting from people. Why did you never buy yours?
That's a good question. Mostly because we couldn't afford it. I would love to own a building, but it really was a matter of nickels and dimes. And these days, the places that we're looking at, they're not for sale. You know, I wish I could buy the Davis location. It's a great location. I wish like we could own that one, but no such luck. The one that's just the first one downtown, I mean, that is just a gross old building. There's, I mean, it really is. And the landlord's great. I love him to death, but he's 78 years old. He wants us to probably buy that building, and maybe we should buy that building, except weirdly, from what I understand, we're part of the problem because the building's appraised at X amount, but we bring in so much revenue for him that it's appraised at this higher level. So he wants to sell it at this level. I want to buy it at this level, and he's not budging and I'm not budging. So I don't want to buy that building. And I think if anybody could, in fact, you know, open up a business, you know, buy your building if you can. It's the best thing to do, so you're not paying that rent out. But it's just money. I mean, you're going to be making all those fixes yourself, and which you kind of do anyway. All of our places, landlords mostly don't do all that much. You know, it's kind of crazy. You're responsible for HVAC and all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm improving your building. I don't get that. But leases, get good at negotiating leases, and perhaps you know, you're not going to have a nightmare later down the road. But moving forward, we might look into, you know, if the right thing happens, you know. So, but it's just money. We had $3,000, as I said. So, and then when we were like making decent money where we kind of could afford, you know, we were just opening another donut shop as opposed to buying a building. And then what happens, you know, I don't want to be a property manager. I just want to make donuts. So that's kind of why. But I would suggest, if you could, buy the building for sure. So, anybody else? Yes?
How did you get into doing weddings, and how do you attract more weddings to come and do
Well, weddings just kind of happened because we just, as I said, we were both universal life ministers. We wanted to have some sort of ceremony because it was voodoo, and it just kind of, and I had married a couple of people before. Cat Daddy had married a couple of people before, so we both just said, let's marry people. We just kind of put a sign up. That's pretty much it. And then we had a friend. It's kind of weird. The first wedding we did, they divorced, but they each married the third wedding that we did. So this couple got married on the first one, and then the third people we married got married because they heard about the first wedding, and everybody switched. So, and then, you know, I think maybe at one point, I mean, we've been interviewed in wedding magazines and things like that, so we've kind of got the word out that way. But it's just in all of our literature, and people weirdly get married at a donut shop. I don't know. I don't know why more people don't do weddings. I mean, it's a real easy thing to do. And for us, we make a little bit of money for sure, but it's more of that story that people were, hey, I was waiting in line, and these people got married, these cats got married, you know, something like that happened. And so when people are waiting in that line that everybody complains about, I like that the line's like a community. People tell stories about things they saw there and all of the wacky things that have happened at Voodoo. So having something like that just adds to that whole story. And to get more weddings, it's strange because we didn't have any for a while. We had 6 this month. There was a Friday the 13th. For some reason, a bunch of people got married in October. Halloween, people get married. So it's kind of, we did like 12 one Halloween. I mean, it was nuts. That were all legal. Everybody got married on Halloween. So that was, and now we kind of let our employees do them a lot. I never liked doing them. I hated doing weddings. I got really nervous. I don't know these people. I hope that they want to stay married together for the rest of their lives. And I got all nervous and freaky about it. So, I mean, I've probably done 50 or something. Cat Daddy, he kind of enjoyed doing it. But now, as I say, our employees get to do them. And they dress up in gorilla suits and weird costumes, and we get to kind of play funny haha wedding. And for $300, that's a cheap wedding, you know, even though it seems like a lot of money for 15, 20 minutes. The average wedding costs $100,000 or something. So save your money, buy that house. Yes.
Do you guys take suggestions from like the community for like new donut ideas?
Not really anymore. We did. I mean, we have all these creative people, but that's kind of was our problem. Is there's just too many. Like it's just, you know, it's all kind of. I always say it's kind of like Mexican food. It's all just kind of the same stuff, but in different combos. So it's like, oh, I could take this chocolate donut and put it in vanilla, or I could take a vanilla donut and put it in chocolate, and then I could put, you know, there's all these crazy combinations like that. We are doing a lot more innovation. We've been working on a lot more savory stuff, But if we just open it up to just anybody, it just turns into a free-for-all. And what we've, as I said, we probably had 100 choices at one point. That's kind of overwhelming for people. But then somebody goes to Austin. They don't know that somebody went rogue and is making a maple whatever, and then somebody goes to Austin and gets all upset and they, I didn't have the blah, blah, blah. So it's, we're kind of just paring down a little bit and just, you know, getting the ones that sell well and listening to customers, listening to suggestions. Sometimes it will retire them. We might bring them back for a limited time, you know, like the McRib or something, you know, maybe we'll, you know, do stuff like that. But we're even getting rid of some more, but we're also going to replace them with our, we made this cannolo donut, which I don't know if that's on there or not, but it's one of our new, it's not on this one. It's on the website, but we made a brand new, just this month we came up with the cannolo donut. It's like a cannoli, and it's all filled with different creams and stuff. And it'll be a great vehicle to probably put cheeses and meats and weird stuff in it somewhere down the line too. So, but, and then, you know, we do that charitable donut every month. So that's always a new donut, but that's just a limited time, you know, get it while you can kind of thing. And then you kind of bring them back and stuff. But it really just, it's just the, I can't really stress enough about how, like, just going all the time we are. I mean, 24 hours a day. And no one's sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And sometimes, you know, we have 15, 16 people working. We have 5 registers going, 2 fryers going, bacon ovens going, people rolling out 50, I mean, it's nuts. And then we do a lot of accounts. You know, we have like the Portland Timbers account. So every game day, there's 50 dozen donuts. They go to the Timbers. Then we got the Thorns, so that's 50 dozen. People don't know how many 50 dozen donuts are. People say, oh, 50 dozen donuts, it doesn't sound like that many. You got to bring a truck. Like, there's a lot of donuts. And to make all those donuts and make them all look the same, and we really do make everything by hand. We use a mix. We're not, you know, making things from scratch, but we roll them out, we cut them by hand. This is a cake hopper, and then this is the yeast, and you cut them out and you fry them. But it's, you know, I wish I could make a donut like this and I could give you one, but it takes from, you know, turning the mixer on with all the stuff, probably an hour and a half-ish to have a finished product. So adding even more to the deal, you know, is kind of complicated. We'll always listen to suggestions if somebody came up with just the greatest idea in the world, but it's always kind of limited. I don't want to have to go to the store to go get sardines, you know, because I just want, as long as the you know, our people can deliver that, but then we have to get it in the chain, and all the stores have to get sardines. So it's kind of, we're just sort of kind of getting it to where it's going to work, and again, kind of put the pedal to the metal a little more, and still remain a, you know, interesting, quirky donut shop. So, anybody else? Yes.
Any plans for a gluten-free donut?
It's so hard. We do vegan donuts, but the environment is there's flour everywhere. So we just can't guarantee it. You know, we do the vegan donuts, which is great. That was a really neat. We didn't think anybody would buy a vegan donut, but that's a great seller, and people really appreciate it. Gluten donuts, I think, are going to be out of luck. I mean, we'd have to have our own kitchen and da-da-da-da-da, and I doubt that's on the menu. I'm never going to say no to anything, though, but it's just tough. And gluten, I feel sorry for people that have gluten allergies, but donuts, it's all about the gluten, kind of. They're puffy and weird. They're kind of, I mean, we've tried to make them like at home and stuff, and they're just weird. But it's the environment. We just can't do it. So, and there's a lot of flour in a donut shop, trust me. Anything else? I'm here all night. I'm here till tomorrow. I might go see The Joker at the theater if anybody wants to go. Well, I really appreciate y'all coming and listening to me ramble at you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Trace.
You're so welcome. Yeah,
Thank
betcha.
you. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate the support, and we'll see you next term. Thanks, everyone.